Um, I am Courtney Warnsman. I am the NCDA board trustee for private practice, business industries, and agencies. And welcome to participating in the first of a series of webinars that we're going to be doing on supporting career development through multiple lenses of mental health and well-being. This came about when our advisory board was doing some brainstorming on the needs of the members of our constituency and what professional development opportunities we might want to provide. And of course, the topic of mental health rose immediately to the top. As we began brainstorming and talking about different things that we might want to cover in a webinar, it might not surprise you to believe that we realize there is no way to cover all of mental health and career in 1 hour. So we decided to make a series out of it. So today's webinar is going to be the first in the series, and we're going to focus on how to help our clients as well as how to help employers to understand and create spaces for people with disabilities and differabilities to thrive in their careers. I have learned so much from the panel as we've been doing our planning session over the past couple of months, and I'm really excited for you to be able to hear from them, some research on the topic, get some practical applications that you may be able to use in your practice, and then also we're going to share their favorite resources. So I want to take a moment to introduce our panel, and I apologize in advance for the fact that my slides are not progressing. Oh no. Let's see here. Well, I'm going to introduce our panel, and I will reshare here in just a moment once I get the next slide up and running. So our panel today consists of 4 members of our constituency advisory board. And the first is Amanda Chenkin. Amanda is a licensed professional counselor, and this still is not working. I'm going to read this to you and then we'll go from there. A licensed professional counselor in Colorado and Maryland and a certified career counselor through NCDA. She is in private practice and is the owner of Choice Career Counseling. She has over 15 years of experience working in career development and 8 years working at the intersection of career development and mental health. Amanda loves working with clients who are feeling stuck and navigating how to write their next chapter in life. Career trauma is also a theme that she started to notice with clients, and she specializes in this area. Ken Meeker is the owner of Vitality Career Coaching, a boutique executive and career coaching company. An essential aspect of Ken's work is diversity, equity, inclusion, justice, and accessibility consulting and training. He develops customized training programs based on clients' unique needs. Ken has received extensive diversity education, participated in numerous seminars and summits, and is Inclusive Behaviors Inventory certified. Ken has contributed to panel discussions on workplace inclusivity on a national level, is a graduate of the American Foundation for the Blind Leadership Development Program, and a recognized leader for blind low vision advocacy. Additionally, Ken is a 2023 participant in the NCDA Leadership Academy. He's the creator and host of the Dissing My Ability podcast, has been a featured guest on several other podcasts and shows, and is a regular contributor of articles on career development to the Bold Blind Beauty Lifestyle magazine. Anush Hansen is a licensed professional counselor, certified career counselor, and owner of Kennebunk Career and Wellness Counseling. She is also the founder of Balanced Card Sorts. Anush holds a master's degree in mental health counseling and a master's degree in public health. Prior to her work as a counselor, she worked for 17 years as a public health researcher and program evaluator. It is Anush's background in health promotion research, mental health, and public health that fuels her commitment to using a holistic, wellness-centered approach when working with others, and that helped to shape the Balanced Card Sorts tools. I'd also like to give a shout out to Betsy Sheets. She is not presenting on our webinar today, but is a part of our advisory board and has been a big part of helping with the planning and providing feedback as we've been putting the webinar together. She has been a member of NCDA since 2007 is a certified career coach in private practice in San Diego and is a co-founder and program manager of the Veteran Career Transition Assistance Program, a nonprofit veteran service organization for senior level military members transitioning into the civilian workforce. Betsy also serves as an adjunct faculty member and career coach in the College of Business Administration at Cal State University, San Marcos. So with that, thank you, Melissa, for getting the slides up and going for me. With that, I would like to turn the session over to Amanda, and she will get us kicked off.
Thank you, Courtney. And I will share my screen. Okay. So today we've kind of divided it into two sections. So we're going to start with Ken and talking about documentable disabilities. So individuals living with a disability that may get documentation from the government for different reasons. And then Anush is going to talk about supporting mental health and well-being in the workplace. We're really excited to be doing this today because yesterday was Global Accessibility Awareness Day. And so I think this webinar fits really well in creating awareness around things that we can be doing when we're working with our clients and folks that we partner with, and also how we might be able to be advocates in the community, particularly with employers. So that being said, I'm going to kick it over to Ken.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It looks like we have a pretty good crowd out there. And so I'd like to start by defining what disability is from a legal perspective within the Americans with Disabilities Act. So what is considered a disability in the workplace? And the ADA defines that as somebody who has a physical or mental impairment that substantially limits one or more major life activities, or they have a record of such an impairment, or they're generally regarded as having such an impairment. So disabilities, as outlined by the ADA, can include, but are certainly not limited to, deafness, blindness, non-functioning or missing limbs, cancer, diabetes, asthma, ADHD, arthritis, OCD, HIV, and depression are just some of the more common disabilities that are recognized. One major issue that's kind of pervasive is that persons living with disability are disproportionately living outside of the labor force and are severely underemployed. As of 2022, 21.3% persons living with disability were employed. That is significantly lower than the general populace, which is employed at a rate of 65.4. And that's per the labor force characteristics summary at the beginning of this year. And that's a significant amount of underemployment. Additionally, for those that are in the labor force, unemployment is twice as high for people living with disabilities. And this is at the as of the end of 2022. And for people that are living with blindness or visual impairments, such as myself, I am severely low vision. That rate goes even higher for unemployment and underemployment. And one of the things that the unemployment rates don't take into consideration is people that are just outside the labor force that are no longer looking for work and haven't within the last 12 months. So what can career practitioners do? First, be aware of the resources that are available to support your clients, and support them in a manner that meets them on their level, meet them where they are, and address the uniqueness of their situation or their condition. Network and connect with people living with disabilities that are thriving in various industries and types of jobs. They're out there connecting with state agencies, local nonprofits. They're out there. It just takes a little bit of effort to connect people together. It's one of the best ways of motivating people to recognize their potential and what's really out there. When people can see themselves in someone else because somebody else is already doing it that's like them, it makes it that much more attainable. And so that is critically important. An example of that is I have a student who is blind, and she used to be a CNA. She wanted to go back into healthcare, and now she's going to school to become an occupational therapy assistant, a CODA. And one of the main reasons she was able to see herself in that position is because I connected her to a blind CODA who's in Louisiana, who's thriving. And so as soon as they had that conversation, she could see herself doing that work. It's very powerful. I would also prepare clients to anticipate reasons an employer might make an assumption about their ability to perform, and help those clients prepare how to overcome those assumptions and demonstrate problem-solving ability and why their disability is not a disadvantage. And to try to find ways to put clients in situations where they can acquire problem-solving skills that empower them to overcome challenges in the future. Wherever possible, encourage volunteering and mentoring opportunities. Volunteering can be a great way to build confidence if somebody's not necessarily ready to go to work. And a big tip is for clients that are solely focused on remote work, get down to the nitty-gritty of why remote work is what's desired, and help them to prepare for some resistance from employers. Because even hiring managers that are looking to hire individuals with disabilities will question why an employee is seeking exclusively remote work, regardless as to their condition or their disability. Finally, here, I have some resources that can be quite useful. The first one is a link to the EEOC's page on discrimination. Next is, there's a great resource called Ask Jan. It's the Job Accommodation Network. It's from the Department of Labor. It is a huge resource. I'm on that website at least a couple times a day. There's the Hire Disability Solutions website, which is a website dedicated to helping individuals with disabilities find employment. There's also Ability Jobs, which is similar to that. There's the ADA National Network, which provides ADA-specific information. Disability 101 is a tremendous resource for individuals who are seeking to go back to work and are curious as to how it is going to impact their benefits. Every state has their own version of it. I'm in Arizona, so it's az.db101.org. It should just be your state's two-letter abbreviation and then .db101.org. And last is to my website. If anybody has questions or wants to discuss this stuff a little bit deeper, I'm more than happy to make myself available. Thank you so much.
Okay, so Ken, are you okay? Got it. I'm just gonna pull up my slides here. Okay. Oh, it's gonna start me from the beginning. Hold on.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who is SlideShare challenged sometimes.
Well, I had it on the right slide, and so I thought it would play from that slide, but that's okay. Okay, so thank you all so much for being here today. We're really excited to put this all together for you, and we're grateful that you're spending some of your Friday with us. So I'm going to be talking more around how we can support our clients and support employees in general, to be able to find themselves in work environments that support their mental health and well-being and allow them to lead sustainable careers and fulfilling careers and healthy careers for them based on what they might be managing in terms of their mental health and well-being. I wanted to start with some case studies. I have 3, and I'm just going to give a little summary. These are all clients that I've had within the past 3 years. I've, of course, changed their names and ages and a few details to protect confidentiality. But in each of these cases, there was at least one pretty major environmental factor that was leading to problems for each client and eventually led each client to either leave their position or have some really intentional conversations with their employer about what they needed to be able to thrive in their work. So the first is Kate. She's 46. Kate is a dean of students at a boarding school, and this had been her role since she graduated from college. Not as dean, she started out in res life and kind of worked her way up through the years to a dean of students. And she actually lived on campus, just a short walk from her office, and had very little separation between her professional life and her personal life. Her personal life, her friends, her connections were all primarily professional relationships, because in that community, they all lived on campus, they all worked together. And then she was also living in a dorm with students. So her work was kind of all around her all the time. She had been diagnosed with generalized anxiety when she was in her late 20s, early 30s, which she was able to manage. But ultimately, when she reached out to me, she had to take a leave of absence because she was having debilitating anxiety, incredible exhaustion, ruminating thoughts, insomnia, and having panic attacks at work. So after some time, she felt she really needed to step away to be able to figure out what was going on. And that's when we started working together. Kate loved the work she was doing with youth and doing some girls leadership programming, but she never really wanted to be a dean. This was something that had just kind of been the natural next step in her career, but she really had no desire to be the person in charge, the last stop, the last say. And this was causing her a lot of anxiety. Because she's very empathetic, staff members and students, of course, would come to her whether they were within her purview or not. So with students, that made a lot of sense, but staff would come to her with problems and conflict, and she felt she was able to manage it for a while, but then started really feeling like she needed separation, right? So leaving a stressful day at work, dealing with student crises, dealing with teams that didn't get along, and then walking 2 minutes to her apartment in the student dorm, there was no space for her to process, to decompress, to have a buffer between her work and her personal life. So Kate said at one point, I want more separation between work and life, and I want time to focus on my mental health. I just don't want to be so exhausted all the time. So that's Kate. David is a 34-year-old CPA working at a prestigious accounting firm in Boston, and he had been there a little over 3 years when we first met. He describes himself as a major introvert and has a diagnosis of social anxiety disorder. And part of why he decided to become an accountant, other than loving math and working with numbers and finance, he liked that he had concrete, discrete tasks, and also really appreciated the independent nature of the work. So most of the time he could be in his cubicle or in his office doing his accounting thing. When we started meeting, his firm over the last couple of years for him had shifted to a work model where during tax season from January to April, the teams that were working on certain client cases would all work together in a big conference room. And this was 9 to 5 every day, January through April. So David found himself really overwhelmed by that. There was a lot of stimulation, a lot of noise, lots going on. He had no space to himself, which as an introvert is extremely hard, as I'm sure some of you know, and with social anxiety is extremely hard for him, at least. It was loud, it was chaotic, it was overstimulating. And understandably, he started to get very anxious. He started to have panic attacks. He started to depersonalize, which is kind of when you feel out of body, outside of yourself. And he would leave the room and just kind of literally hide in the bathroom to try to calm down and get some grounding and be okay. And this was becoming an issue. People were noticing, and it was very stressful for him. And he said, I cannot work like this anymore, even though it's only 3 months out of the year. I need to know that I can do my work on my own most of the time. Julie, age 25, is an administrative assistant working in a small nonprofit. She and I just ended our work together about a month ago. Julie is considered a highly sensitive person, which I'll talk about a little bit in one of the next slides. She's been diagnosed with ADHD and also Crohn's disease and has experienced some trauma and post-traumatic stress related to her illness and her many hospital stays and surgeries. She really enjoys her work. She loves the organization. She really likes the tasks that she's responsible for, but she knows that because of her ADHD and also being more sensitive to sounds and movement and smells and just stimulation, that she really needs a private, quiet space in order to do her work. And because of her ADHD, really needs 2 monitors to be able to kind of keep track of things, see stuff in a bigger space and kind of spread out and stay organized. Because she's the admin, she's often asked to come up to the front desk of the organization, which is a high traffic area. It's an open area. There's one computer screen. She's kind of in the middle of it all. And this became really distracting to her and was causing her a lot of anxiety, and then ultimately caused quite a bit of shame around, well, why can't I make this work? What's wrong with me? You know, they want me to do this, but I just cannot focus and I cannot get my work done. So happens that this organization is also renovating their office, like literally just, to the studs, redesigning their whole office space. And a lot of people in her office want it to be like an open, collaborative space, no walls, no cubicles. And she's really having to advocate for herself to be given a space where it will work for her to get her work done. So we worked quite a bit on helping her advocate for herself and ask for what she wants and needs. So she said, I need them to understand that to work my best, I need a quiet space where I can spread out and focus. So all those case studies are really meant to be examples of how our environment impacts how we work and impacts our career wellness. And part of the reason why I'm even presenting on this today is because as an advisory group, we were discussing different models that we all use in our practice. And this model, which is the 8 dimensions of wellness, is one that I have been using even before I became a counselor and career counselor. So back to my public health promotion days, this model was very woven into the work that I was doing. And so these are the 8 dimensions of wellness. This includes emotional health, social health, physical health, environmental health, financial health, occupational health, intellectual health, and spiritual health. And we are sharing these slides with everyone, so you'll have a copy of this. But I circled environmental one because that's what I'm talking about today. But there are other wellness wheel models out there. This one with the 8 dimensions tends to be used more by higher ed and high schools or schools, whereas in the corporate wellness community, so like National Wellness Institute, Wellness Council of America, they all use a wellness wheel that has 6 domains or 6 dimensions. So they leave out the intellectual health, and they also leave out the environmental health and environmental wellness, which I feel very strongly needs to be in here, because as we know, our environment, whether we're talking about our home environment or our work environment or the natural environment, greatly impacts our health and well-being and our ability to do good work. So that is kind of where my portion of this presentation came from, was us as a group talking about this wellness wheel. So I want to talk a little bit about what we mean by the word environment. Environment can mean a lot of things. We know that the quality of our workplace experience depends largely on our environment. So environmental factors can be related to values, to our personality type, to our work style, to security and safety, and just our general preferences and priorities. So of course, there's the physical and built environment. So that would be, the building in which we're working, if we're in a cubicle or an office or a shared space, if we're in a LEED certified building that is, considered a healthy building for people to work in. So our built environment is very important, which of course we also recognized during the pandemic when we were all working from home and had no separation, and we're working from our kitchens and our basements and all of crazy stuff. The natural environment, of course, impacts us in a lot of ways. In terms of career, of course, if you work outdoors, that's going to be a factor in the environment around you. But also when we think about how the natural environment is kind of let into our workspace, so whether that's a lot of plants or natural light, or the location of your building, whether there's a healthy sort of natural environment space around you that you can go to and have breaks and get some of that exposure to the outdoors and to nature. When we talk about environment, we could be talking about the work pace. So is it a fast-paced work environment? Is it a slower, calmer paced environment, or somewhere in the middle? And this is very important for a lot of our clients, and for us, of course, as well. The way that organization or a team communicates and collaborates is part of the environment. So how you're expected to interact with others, and also whether you're doing a lot of team-based work versus independent work, and also your company culture and politics, which of course encompasses a huge amount of space in how we feel about where we work and how we're able to work at our best. So these are just kind of getting a little more granular around physical factors. So in the slide before, we talked about the physical environment, but also these other aspects of environment. These are some more specific physical factors that could potentially contribute to a healthier work environment. And we talked about the indoor versus outdoor. That kind of depends on what the individual client prefers and needs. Excuse me, I don't want to start coughing. Hold on. One sec. Courtney, can you fill in for me for a sec?
So as Anush was starting to say, when we talk about the different physical factors, it's all about how we feel in the workplace and whether we feel safe, whether we can be engaged, whether we feel like that workspace allows us to be our productive selves. And so as you're looking through here, we have, the indoor versus the outside, the safety protocols, and y'all, with all the stuff that's going on in our world right now, but one of the things that came up in one of our conversations just a couple of days ago was also other kinds of issues that we hadn't planned to put in, but this triggered my thought about people who have food allergies. And, food allergies are huge for people. And so this idea of, is the place where you're working someplace that respects that and that everyone understands that those things can be lethal, literally, but a place that where you can feel productive, where you can feel safe, where you have all of the tools at your in your grasp to be able to be successful in your role. Anush, you ready to take it back?
I think so. I'm sorry. My whole family was sick last week and I just have some leftover stuff. So I have a pile of cough drops and the honey lemon tea right here and I'm good. Thank you, Courtney. Okay, so yes, so these are some physical factors that can contribute to a healthier work environment for some. So like enough space and privacy for employees who need it, an accessible layout. So work environment that follows universal design that is accessible for all employees, regardless of ability. Ergonomics are very important. Facilities available to the employee, lighting, decoration, and then biggie separation between your workspace and your personal space. So even if you're working from home, so important to, which is hard for a lot of people, like given how much actual space they have, but somehow having some kind of discrete space for work and being able to walk away from that and kind of tend to your personal life when you're not working. That's also, when we think about technology and getting our emails on our phones and being plugged in all the time, which we know is not healthy for us, that kind of falls into place here. So how do you set up, or how do you or your clients set up boundaries and buffers between your digital connection with your work, and what does your employer expect from you in terms of being available online during work hours, after work hours, etc. So now we're kind of getting, these are environments, but also kind of bordering on values and sort of that cultural environment. We want to kind of help our clients figure out what they need for breaks, what they need for time off, how they're going to utilize that time to be able to take care of their mental health and well-being. So as we talk about on-site, remote, hybrid work, helping our clients identify what, like Ken was saying, like why they want to work hybrid, how that impacts and improves their mental health and well-being, and how to communicate that, or I'm sorry, remote, how to communicate that to their employer. With the natural built environment, if there's walkable space where people can take their breaks and get some movement and step away from their computers, that's the way that employers can support their well-being. And then offering wellness programming and even facilities or discounts on facilities to help their employees take care of themselves. And then autonomy and flexibility is a big one. That trust between the employee and the employer that they will get their work done while also giving them permission to take care of themselves and hopefully have a say in how they work, when they work. It's not always possible, of course, especially with certain kinds of industries, but for industries where it is possible, helping our clients sort of vocalize, this is how I need to work to be able to be the most productive, the most engaged employee, also be able to take care of the things I need to take care of at home, and have some rest and relaxation. So this slide kind of summarizes really for the clients who I tend to see the most. And when I think about how our environment, how our work environment impacts our mental health and well-being, these are the conditions and the traits and diagnoses that come up the most in my practice, at least. I know I'm certain there are others, but this is sort of what my experience has been. So we all know the difference between introverts and extroverts, and how introverts might need to recharge and work in a way where they're able to replenish their energy, versus extroverts who really want to be around people and having lots of conversations and engaged in groupthink and having more of that interaction. Hold on. Hello, Courtney.
Here we go. All right. So in general, all of this that we're looking at is how all of these things fit together. And so there are so many different variables. And the slide here talks about many of the different issues or situations that people come to the workplace with. And Anush was talking introvert versus extrovert. We also, and we've got a little bit of a conversation going on the chat now with people who have sensory issues, whether we're dealing with scents, smells, noises, all of those things, and how can an employer provide a space that is comfortable for their employees, and helping our clients learn to advocate for themselves with their employers for what they need to be able to do their jobs. The chronic illness and disabilities that Ken was talking about, chronic illness and disability isn't just physical. Those things also have an impact on us mentally and emotionally. And so again, all of these things are interwoven. When we look at the mental health diagnoses, some of what we're talking about today are the diagnosed. Ken mentioned the ADA, all of that, but some of the things that we're talking about are not diagnosed kinds of disabilities or differabilities. They are just things that we all have. We were in a session in Maryland a couple of months ago where the presenter said, "How many of you wear glasses?" And almost everybody in the room raised their hand for wearing glasses or contacts. And she talked about the fact that we all have things that we need to be able to do our jobs, whether it is glasses to help us with our vision or whatever else it is. So it doesn't have to be a diagnosed, legally protected sort of disability or differability. It's all of these different things that go together that affect our mental health and well-being in the workplace. Anush, you ready?
I don't know. We'll see. I'm so sorry, everyone. I thought I was going to make it. The highly sensitive people trait is really interesting. I myself am 100% in this category. In my resources section, I'll share it, but highly sensitive people just generally all around have a greater sensitivity and response to environmental and social stimuli. So for example, I'll just use myself as personally to share how it's been for me, but I have a lot of clients who also would be considered highly sensitive. So back in my research days, I worked in a sea of cubicles, and for some reason, my cubicle was the space where everyone congregated, not in my cubicle, but just like outside my cubicle. The walls were high, so like I couldn't see anyone. But that constant sort of, not just the noise, but the activity, it was so distracting, like that I would have physical reaction of like panic and like heart palpitating and like super irritable. And I just could not work, like even with noise canceling headphones. It just didn't work for me. And I had this experience where my supervisor at the time, she was like total extrovert, super energetic, could like really think on her feet, like for anything. And we were writing a grant proposal together. And she wanted to go to a coffee shop to work on it on Google Docs, like sitting face to face on the same Google Doc, like sort of, you know, pushing out this grant proposal. And it was so overstimulating for me because, you know, you're in a coffee shop, there's people all around, there's noises, there's music, there's clanking of plates. And I couldn't do it. Like I was so anxious and not productive at all. Some people work really well that way. I just cannot. You know, noises, smells, light, large groups, like these things impact people who are highly sensitive in a very profound way, to the point sometimes they can't really function. So that's one that I just personally find very interesting. And then these mental health diagnoses, social anxiety disorder impacts about 12% of the population, generalized anxiety, about 6%, and ADHD, which shows up a lot in career counseling. Oh, I forgot about this slide. So what can practitioners do to help their clients? So we need to really help our clients get really specific about their needs, their values, and their priorities when it comes to their mental health and well-being. And that can be hard to kind of tease out, but giving them the time and space and asking the right questions to help them understand like what is going to work best for them. How can they be their best selves and thrive both in work and in life. Encourage clients to learn about their condition or their trait or the diagnoses. That can be through podcasts like Ken's, or through YouTube or books or websites. Help them understand how different environments might support or hinder their ability to do their work and take care of themselves. Teach them how to advocate for themselves. So that might be some assertiveness training, practicing with them, like my client who needed the 2 monitors, like we role played and she had like a few bullet points that she kind of had in her pocket. So she had like go-to things that she knew she wanted to tell them, even though she knew it would be a stressful conversation. Advocating for systemic changes, of course, and then providing training opportunities for employers to create inclusive spaces and practices. These are a lot of my go-to resources. So when I was talking about in the previous slide, helping clients get really specific about their values, their priorities, their needs, it's no surprise to many people here that I'm really into card sort assessment tools. Nodell Card Sorts has a career values and a motivated skills card sort, which both get at work environment. Balancecardsorts.com, that's my company. I have a work-life balance assessment and a student career values assessment that helps people get specific about what they need personally and professionally to have their balance across their career and personal life. And then these are some go-to books. How to Be Yourself is for people with social anxiety. It's really approachable read, some nice case studies in there. Driven to Distraction is sort of the foundational book on ADHD. Smart but Scattered for adults. There's more than one for kids as well. So if you do look for this, make sure you get the one that speaks to your population. The Highly Sensitive Person, Empath Survival Guide, also for sensitive people. Quiet by Susan Cain, which is very popular around introverts at work. And then these are some workbooks that I like to use with clients. I don't necessarily like go over their answers or their activities with them, but I find that these are nice to kind of give to the client as supplemental to our work. Even if you're not a mental health counselor, you know, these are things they can do on their own. And maybe, you know, they're seeing a therapist, or helps them to understand what's going on for them better. Maybe they connect with a therapist. But these are the ones that I use most. Okay, I'm going to stop talking now.
Will you leave your screen though? That's perfect.
Oh,
It's okay. I got it. All right. Oh, hang on. Let's do this. Nope. Wow, I'm having a moment. There we go. Okay. So we're coming to the end of today. So thank you everyone for hanging with us. So much really important information. And I am going to close us out with a little plug, I guess, for the this framework that's up on the screen. So back in, I believe it was November 2022, the US Surgeon General's office published a paper and a framework for workplace mental health and well-being. And I think this is really crucial because we've talked a lot today about individuals and how individuals, how we can support individuals in advocating for themselves. This framework says, hey, employers, you are also responsible for making spaces that are safe and that are focused on worker voice and equity. And it does a really good job of providing concrete ways that employers can implement just tiny small changes, right? We're not talking about like, telling everyone you have to like overhaul everything all at once. This is saying, hey, where can you find spaces in your culture, in your physical space, in how you work with folks that really start to center worker voice and equity. I'm going to steal Anusha's example that she shared a while back because I thought it was perfect. So when we think about a lot of this, right, we think maybe a lot about like office work and industries where people use computers, but we've also got tons of industries like manufacturing and healthcare where people can't work from home, or there's really limited opportunities to do so. And so somebody saying, well, if I have a nurse, I can't give them like all the flexibility, right? Like they have to work a shift and they have to do certain things. And the challenge back to that employer is absolutely, right? There are definite pieces that can't be flexible, but where are the places that you can be flexible? Can you shift how you offer time off? Can you change workstations in a different way? Like where can you start to take some of that feedback and implement it? So this is our conclusion, trying to just showcase the spectrum of differabilities, disabilities, and how we can support clients and employers in this journey in creating truly inclusive and equitable spaces and places for folks. And I'm gonna pop it back over to Courtney for Q&A.
All right. Thank you all so much for the great information. We're going to keep the chat open for a little while for any questions. And so go ahead and pop in any questions you have. We do have a question for Anush. Mary Rose asks, are empaths and highly sensitive people synonymous?
Hi there. I wouldn't say they're synonymous. It's synonymous, but highly correlated. for sure. Yeah, but I wouldn't consider them the same thing.
Other questions that you have for our panel? And a hush falls over the room. Here we go. How do you find out if you are a highly sensitive person?
So you can certainly go online and probably find a quiz. In the book that I mentioned by her last name is Aron, Aron. There is like a checklist, like you might be highly sensitive if, and then a list of situations that overwhelm you. When I did it, I was like, yep. So, there isn't, as far as I know, there isn't, it's not a diagnosis, it's a trait. So, there isn't like a formal assessment like there might be for depression or anxiety. But if you read that book, you can, you're able to kind of self-assess whether you fall into that category. And there's a few books around it, also for highly sensitive children, which is really helpful for a lot of parents.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Melissa.
For Ken, can you talk about where the line is between what an employee or client with a disability should problem solve for themselves and what the workplace should accommodate?
So that's kind of a complicated question because I don't see them as the same thing. Accommodations or reasonable accommodations are legal requirements that employers are supposed to work with their employee to handle. And that gets around disclosure and all of that kind of stuff. Reasonable accommodations are available to anybody, whether or not they have an official diagnosis or not. They just have to have some sort of condition that limits their ability to do something. And if a reasonable accommodation can allow that to happen, an employer is required to work with that employee to make it happen. And most accommodations are under $500 if they cost anything at all. And if you are working with a client who needs an accommodation, I strongly encourage reaching out to Ask Jan. That is their job, is to help in that process. There's all kinds of resources. They will even come to the aid of the client and intervene with and work with the employer to try and find a way to accommodate that employee's needs. So they work in tandem in terms of what you want to empower your clients to problem solve and figure out the things that they can, and simultaneously seek an accommodation as well. So it's not one or the other. They can work in tandem. Like, I'll use myself as an example. I have severe low vision. So there are things that I need in order to function at my highest level, such as magnification, certain things regarding large print, that type of stuff. But that doesn't mean that I shouldn't learn Braille. So that's an example of how you should do both together.
A member is asking what type of accommodation can be made for a person with overactive bowel or bladder issues. Is that, Ken, something that would be a good Ask Jan sort of conversation?
Well, there's never a one size fits all approach. It's meeting the needs of that individual and having that conversation like, okay, what is it that would allow you to do what you need to do the essential job functions? I'm not aware of an accommodation that an employer can provide other than maybe some additional time to use the restroom or that type of stuff. But the specifics do matter when it comes to that, and having those conversations is very important. But something also equally important to educate clients on are their rights and their responsibilities under the ADA. It's very important that they know what is and isn't protected. And they also need to have an awareness to know what an employer doesn't have to do as well. that's equally important, I think, because it's not all just on the employer. It's not all their responsibility. The client or the employee needs to also be aware of what their part in it is as well.
Thank you. Amanda, when working with a client in therapy, when do you refer to a vocational specialist for further evaluation and support versus working in session on career satisfaction?
That's a good question. So if we're working on, that's a good question. I need to think about that for a second. Because I think to Ken's point, right, like it maybe really depends on the situation and what's coming up for that person. Like, actually, for example, I am working with a client who identifies as autistic, doesn't have a formal diagnosis, but based on our interactions, I would say is autistic, and experiences lives with depression, right? And he came to me just for I need help finding a job right now. And I am likely going to refer him to a vocational person just based on his needs and what he's looking for. I think he would work best with a voc rehab person to really be able to get in there and find something. He's young, he's in his early 20s. So there's some skill building and developmental things that could be working on.
Okay. Anush, let's see, where was that one? What is your single best piece of advice to tease out environmental needs from a client?
I want to say card sorts. Use card sorts. I mean, so, so when clients come to us and they know something's not working for them in their work situation, and they're coming to us already feeling stressed and anxious and overwhelmed and burned out, and they're not doing a good enough job and they can't take care of themselves or their families, it's very hard for them to pull out of the air what they need. With card sort tools, and I'm sure there are other types of assessment tools that could do this too. I just gravitate towards card sorts because they're qualitative. They help clients tell their story and kind of shape their narrative. It gives them language and helps them organize their thoughts around ideas and things they probably already know they need, but it makes it more tangible and puts it in front of them, and they can sort of see it all in one place and be like, oh, that's the thing I need, and I'm not getting that, or that's the group of things, or there's a theme across these values or priorities or skills or what have you, that are necessary to me in order to be able to work well and live well. And when they see that, it can be very affirming and very validating, and also give them language to start shaping a conversation that they can have with their employer or their colleagues or their, I don't know, their supervisees or supervisor. So anything that helps them organize their thinking around what they need and kind of use that language to have conversations.
All right. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. We do have one last question. And Wendy asked about how to get an official, in quotation marks, diagnosis that is recognized and can be discussed with an employer. Sometimes we suspect there's something, but don't know for sure. Especially as an adult, it's tough to find affordable resources.
I can take that. I can take that one. So an official diagnosis, in terms of a doctor, some sort of official, you have this condition, whether it be something that's physical or mental, But also in order to, within the ADA's definition, you don't have to necessarily have an official diagnosis in order to be covered by the ADA. You can simply be perceived as having a condition. If there's a general consensus that they believe you to have something, you're covered by the ADA because you are treated the same as if you have it. So that is another way. It doesn't always require some sort of official documentation in order to seek necessarily a reasonable accommodation or to be protected under the ADA. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. So we're going to start our wrap up here. For those of you who are interested, because in a webinar like this, we have to stay pretty surface level. We are looking at doing some podcasts that'll dive a little bit deeper into some of these discussions and topics. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to our wonderful panel. We appreciate your expertise and your willingness to share that with us, and hope to see many of you in Chicago for conference next month. So have a great day and a great weekend, everyone.